The old house stood alone at the end of a long, winding road, shrouded in mist and mystery. Emily felt a chill as she approached, but she brushed it off, attributing it to the cold autumn air. The house had been abandoned for decades, its history a tapestry of rumors and ghost stories. She didn't believe in such things until now. Emily had always been captivated by old houses, their charm, their history, and their secrets hidden within their walls. When she found the ancient mansion on the outskirts of town, she felt an undeniable pull towards it. With her savings and a small loan, she bought the property, excited to make it her own. Moving in the first few days were filled with cleaning and organizing, and she was thrilled with her new adventure. The house, despite its age, had a certain grandeur to it. Large empty rooms echoed with the footsteps of the past, and Emily was eager to fill them with new memories. One evening, as she explored the dusty attic, she stumbled upon a small hidden door. It was locked, but curiosity got the better of her. She found an old rusty key in the drawer nearby, and after a bit of struggle, managed to open the door. Inside, she discovered a narrow staircase leading down into the darkness. Emily hesitated, but decided to descend. At the bottom of the staircase, Emily found herself in a hidden basement. It was cold and damp, with a musty smell that spoke of decades of neglect. The walls were lined with shelves filled with old books, jars of strange substances, and peculiar artifacts. As she examined the items, she felt a strange sense of unease, as if she were being watched. She decided to leave, but as she turned to go, she heard a faint whisper. She froze, listening intently. The whisper seemed to come from the walls themselves, a soft, urgent murmur that she couldn't quite understand. She hurried back up the stairs, locking the door behind her. That night, Emily had trouble sleeping. The whispering from the basement haunted her dreams, turning them into restless nightmares. She awoke, she convinced herself that it was just her imagination. But as the days passed, the whispering grew louder, more insistent. It seemed to follow her throughout the house, always just out of earshot. Emily tried to ignore it, focusing on her renovations, but the whispers became impossible to dismiss. They spoke of pain, suffering, and betrayal. She began to see shadows moving in the corners of her vision, fleeting and insubstantial. The house, once a place of potential, was becoming a source of dread. Desperate for answers, Emily started researching the house's history. She discovered that it once had belonged to the Ravenswood family, a wealthy and influential clan known for their eccentricity. They had mysteriously disappeared one night, leaving the house abandoned. Rumors of dark rituals and sinister events surrounded their disappearance, but nothing was ever proven. The more she learned, the more the whispers tormented her. They seemed to know her fears, her insecurities. They whispered of her loneliness, her failures. Emily felt her sanity slipping away. She began avoiding the basement, but the whispers followed her, growing louder and more desperate. Emily's behavior became increasingly erratic. She started hearing the whispers even when she was nowhere near the basement. They followed her, a constant, sinister presence. She tried to reach out to her friends, but they dismissed her concerns, attributing them to stress and isolation. Her nights were sleepless, filled with haunting visions and disembodied voices. One night, the whispers became screams. Emily woke up in a cold sweat, the screams echoing in her mind. She felt a compulsion to return to the basement, a pull she couldn't resist. Trembling, she unlocked the hidden door and descended the stairs once more. The basement was different this time. The walls seemed to pulse with a life of their own. The whispers now a cacophony of voices. Emily felt a presence behind her. When she turned, there was nothing there. She stumbled forward, feeling as if she were being pushed by invisible hands. At the far end of the basement, she found a small alcove. In it was an old leather-bound book. As she reached for it, the whispers grew deafening, a chorus of agony and despair. Her hands trembled as she opened the book, revealing pages filled with strange symbols and incantations. Emily's eyes were drawn to a particular passage. It spoke of a ritual to bind souls to objects, trapping them in a state of eternal torment. She realized with horror that a Ravenwood family had performed this ritual, binding their souls to the very walls of the house. The whispers were their cries for release. Determined to free them, Emily began to read the incantation aloud. The air grew cold and the walls seemed to close in around her. The voices screamed in unison, a sound of both pain and hope. As she finished the incantation, a wave of energy surged through the room, knocking her to the ground. When she regained consciousness, the basement was silent. The oppressive feeling was gone, replaced by a sense of peace. Emily felt a strange calm wash over her as she climbed back up the stairs. The house, once filled with darkness, now seemed lighter, as if a great burden had been lifted. In the days that followed, Emily noticed a frenzied change in the atmosphere of the house. The whispers were gone, replaced by an eerie silence. She felt a sense of triumph, believing she had freed the tormented souls of the Ravenswoods. But her relief was short-lived. One evening, as she sat by the fireplace, she heard a faint knock at the door. She opened it to find a stranger standing there, an elderly man with a weathered face and a piercing blue eyes. He introduced himself as Thomas Ravenswood, a descendant of the original family. He had heard rumors of the house's haunting and wanted to see it for himself. Emily invited him in, eager to share her story. As she recounted the events, Thomas listened intently, his expression growing darker. When she finished, he shook his head gravely.
"You've made a grave mistake,"
he said.
"The spirits of my ancestors were not tormented souls seeking release. They were guardians bound to the house, protected from something far worse."
Emily felt a chill run down her spine.
"What do you mean?"
she asked. Thomas explained that the Ravenwoods had performed the binding ritual not out of malice, but out of necessity. They'd discovered a dark presence within the house, an ancient entity that sought to escape into the world. The only way to contain it was to bind their own souls to the house, creating a barrier to keep the entity imprisoned. By freeing the spirits, Emily had unwittingly broken the barrier. The dark presence was now free to roam the house, and it was only a matter of time before it found a way to escape into the world. Panic set in as Emily realized the gravity of her mistake. The peaceful atmosphere of the house was a facade, hiding the true horror that lurked within. She felt a growing sense of dread as the night wore on, the shadows deepening and the air growing colder. Thomas insisted that they needed to re-establish the barrier, but the ritual required a willing sacrifice. Someone had to bind their soul to the house, taking on the role of guardian. Emily knew what she had to do. It was her fault the entity was free, and it was her responsibility to contain it. With a heavy heart, she agreed to perform the ritual. Thomas guided her through the steps, the ancient symbols and incantations echoing in the dimly lit basement. As the final words left her lips, Emily felt a searing pain in her chest. Her vision blurred, and she collapsed to the floor. When Emily awoke, she was alone in the basement. The air was heavy, with an oppressive silence. She could feel the weight of the house pressing down on her, a constant reminder of her new role. The dark presence was still there, lurking in the shadows, but it was contained once more. Emily had become the new guardian, bound to the house for eternity. The whispers returned, but this time they were her own. She could feel the presence of the Ravenswoods, their souls intertwined with hers. Together they would keep the darkness at bay. Years passed, and the house remained abandoned. Locals spoke of the haunted mansion, warning others to stay away. But every so often, someone would venture in, drawn by curiosity or a sense of adventure, and they would hear the whispers, soft and insistent, echoing through the walls. Emily watched them from the shadows, her eyes hollow, her soul lost. She was no longer afraid of the dark, for she had become part of it. The house on the outskirts of town stands as a testament to the dangers of curiosity and the unknown. Its windows, like eyes, stare blankly in the night, hiding the horrors within. The whispers in the walls are a constant reminder of the sacrifices made to keep the darkness contained, and those who dare to enter will always feel the presence of the guardians, watching, waiting, whispering.